There we go. All right, cool. Let's straighten out. How's everybody doing? It's good to see you all. Those of you who are watching this on YouTube after the fact, welcome. I'm glad that you decided to stop in and watch. So today, what I plan to do is, assuming that I get some people in here, I'm just gonna take some time to answer your questions and talk to you a little bit about what I do, talk about myself, talk about my background, talk about singing, of course. And I want to take your questions. I know that a lot of you guys have had a ton of questions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through some of the comments and some of the questions that I've gotten on some of my videos and address some different things. And hopefully you guys will get to know a little bit more about me, and really fun. This is going to be neat. I want to do this semi-regularly, and ultimately what I want to end up doing is having a like voice lesson or something come through in this way as well. Like I'm some of the people that I work with have actually shown some interest in possibly doing a live lesson. Some of my people that I know in the music industry, different people who sing and who play instruments, to take voice lessons and things, have talked about maybe doing a live lesson with me as well. So that's all kind of in my think tank for the moment about this kind of thing. So for the moment, we don't have anybody in here, and that's cool. So what I'm going to do is I will go ahead and pull up my most recent video where I actually asked you guys to give me some questions to answer, and I'll go through some of those. Let's see. Pull that up right this second. All right. So on my last video, I got 4 questions. Well, no, 3. One of them was just a comment. So on my last video where I asked you guys to give me your questions, the first one that I got was from Will Halverson, and it says, James Hetfield vocal analysis. So James Hetfield is obviously one of the pioneers of the metal singing genre. He obviously had a huge impact on the way that people sing with that style of music and in that type of idiom. If I took James Hetfield on as a voice student, I would probably have some pretty major issues with his technique. A lot of his singing is done with a lot of strain, with a lot of push. It's not exactly the most relaxed or free sound. I think that he probably let off of some of that aggression as his career has progressed. Like I remember in particular, I saw the S&M DVD, the live performance with the orchestra, and I remember watching that and thinking, okay, well, his singing isn't as aggressive now as it used to be. And I don't know a whole lot about his career as far as the things that he's been through as a singer. I don't know if he's had any vocal surgeries. I don't know if he's had any kind of problems like that he's had to work on. But I can say for sure that every time I've ever heard him sing, I've gotten the impression that he's using a lot of extraneous tension in the neck area, in the jaw especially. It's kind of a common characteristic of lots of these metal singers, though, especially the jaw tension thing. That's a big deal, and I don't really know where that stems from. I don't know where I don't know where people get the idea that that's a good way to sing. Maybe it's just the people teach themselves because they have a certain sound they're trying to create, and by tightening up their jaw like that, they get the sound that they want. That could be it. And I think that a lot of singers that don't have a lot of experience in terms of training, or don't have a lot of education on the subject, I think that what happens with them is they just make sound, and they don't think, well, what is this sound going to do to me in the long term? They just say, I'm gonna make sound, and however it comes out, as long as it creates the sound that I want to create, that's what I'm going to do. So if I had to give a one sentence synopsis of James Hetfield as a vocalist, I would say that he is extremely talented, definitely fits his style very well, but does not have any form of sustainable technique. And I wouldn't be surprised if I did an in-depth analysis, I would see a decay in his voice over time. but I don't know. I have to go in and do a full blown video, take an hour or so watching his live recordings throughout the course of his career. So hopefully that just a decent enough analysis for you. Hey, there's somebody in here. Hello, whoever you are. How you doing? Feel free to chat. Feel free to leave comments, talk to me. I'll answer any questions you got. So next up, the next question I have is, I might not be there. This is from OC. Hey man, how you doing? I actually know him from a forum that I've been a part of for a long time, and he kind of picked up on this channel as a result of me posting on the forum. Hey Sabian, how you doing? Good to see you here. I'm glad someone's here. I told myself that if I could get 5 people in here for this time, for the channel, I'd be happy. So yeah, I'm glad that somebody decided to drop in. All right, so so the question is, I might not be there due to time zones, but could you do a comparison between Tadja and Floor? Yeah, cool. Yeah, everything's great. Thanks. Yeah, Devon is definitely someone that I'm going to do a full video on. He's so prolific and he's got so much to analyze that it's hard to condense him into just like a 10-minute synopsis. There are a lot of things about Devon's technique that I really like, and I think for the genre he does really well. And there are some things that, like I was saying a little while ago, I don't know if you caught, but some things I think people just do to create sound and they don't really think about the damage it might do. But like there are a couple of songs off of Deconstruction in particular. There's that intro. I want to keep this G rated, maybe PG rated. So I don't know if this is a PG rated word, but let me see what track number it is. It is track number 6, The Mighty Masturbator. That is, I think that the way that he delivers the beginning of that was pretty done. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, it was pretty well done. I think that there are several things in the song, well, in his singing throughout that album, that I hear technique wise where he's learned some things that you don't just naturally do, like certain ways to position your larynx when you make sound that, I mean, I guess someone could stumble into doing it, but most of the time certain singing techniques, like some of the things he does, require training. So I wouldn't be surprised if he did have some degree of vocal training. But yeah, he's a really good singer. He's an incredible entertainer, a brilliant musician. So I do plan on going really in depth with him. But like it's like the James LaBrie video. It was like 40 minutes long. I could have cut down on it a lot, I know, but that was before I really knew a lot about editing and stuff like that. So I'm getting better. But the video with Devon's going to be kind of like that, since he's so prolific and he's been through so many different genres. I'm going to have to kind of piece it together rather than just doing 10 minutes to sum it all up. You just can't with him. He's just done so much. Okay, so Tadja and is it Tadja? Yeah. Do a comparison between Tadja and Floor. Okay, so he wants me to do a comparison between the two. If not a comparison, just an overview of their qualities and drawbacks as singers. Hey, how you doing? I got 4 people in here. Yes. Good to see you guys. I'm happy to see all of you. I'm glad you're here. Thanks for dropping in. Is that Okozi Makazi? Okozi Mazaki. Ikozi Mazaki. There we go. Ikozi Mazaki. I got it. Let's see. Looking forward to take your on his longevity, considering how harsh his vocals were in the. Yeah, it's I've read an interview, or either read or watched an interview with him. I don't remember when it was from. I want to say that it was from like 2013, 2014, where Devon said that like as he's gotten older, he started outsourcing a lot of his like harsh vocals to singers. And if you look at some of his albums, like Deconstructed, I think brings in like 4 or 5 different like harsh vocalists. So maybe he did that because he sees what it's doing to his voice. I'm not sure. Like I said, it's going to take me some time to really go do a deep dive into his singing, but I will. It's definitely coming because I've gotten so many requests for it. Okay, so the question from OC was about comparing Tadja and Floor from Nightwish. And in all fairness, I've never listened to a ton of Nightwish. I listened to enough to be familiar with him on a rudimentary level, but I've never really done a super in-depth, like listen to their whole discography type thing. But I have listened to the two of them in comparison, and I would say that they are Tadia is probably closer to a classical technique, and Floor is probably closer to like a musical theater Broadway type technique. To keep it simple, I honestly don't like the sound of truly classical bel canto type vocals and like metal music. And I mean, I speak from someone who's been trained in bel canto, so that's my singing style, and I know it doesn't really fit that well with the metal sound. A lot of the like operatic sound that you hear in metal singing is just people using vibrato heavily. You don't really hear the actual bel canto sound like if you listen to like Thomas Hampson or Bryn Terfel or Placido Domingo or any of those like big name guys. You probably wouldn't you probably aren't hearing operatic in the true bel canto sense of the word. So I'm not a big fan of bel canto in the sound of like metal. Like if you listen to that true symphonic orchestra that James LaBrie did with those tenors, that gives you kind of an idea of how a true bel canto sound would fit into a metal setting. And to me, it just I don't know, it just didn't really do much for me. And maybe the singer that's maybe nobody's really bridged the gap yet to know if a way to make like truly operatic bel canto singing fit in the metal. I think that's the case, and somebody will inevitably do it, but I haven't found any examples myself that I particularly like. Now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with liking the sound, but for me personally, I just haven't found anyone that I felt like did it well. Floor probably fits the band better with her sound because it's more theatrical. And I mentioned this in my Freddie Mercury video, that there's a difference between operatic singing and musical theater or Broadway singing. And I think that Floor is much more in the Broadway musical theater vein. And I think that fits into the sound a lot better. I think they both have very good technique, actually. I listened to both of them, and I thought they were both pretty well-adjusted singers, well-trained singers. I think Floor is the better fit for the band. I think Tadia is probably a slightly more technically proficient singer. So maybe that kind of gives you an idea. Hopefully that answers the question. Oh, a bunch of comments. Okay, cool. I've watched other stuff by James LaBrie and appreciate Simon's vocals. Actually, he was the one that inspired me to start singing. Awesome. Hey, man, that's you pick somebody that you love, and that makes you want to sing, right? It's funny. My story is when I was 5 or 6. Like I've been listening to music since I was like 3. My mom told me that I used to like listen to Dark Side of the Moon on repeat when I was like 3 years old, and I tried to take my cassette tape away from me because I listened to it so much. But I really started singing when I was like 4 or 5, and my grandmother or somebody, I don't remember who it was, somebody like managed to get me on a local radio station singing Hound Dog by Elvis, because I really liked Elvis as a kid for whatever reason. So I guess that was my initial sort of introduction into singing, was like singing like Elvis as a kid. But that developed, and I picked my favorite singers, and kind of, I wouldn't mimic them necessarily, but I would follow along. I listen to their music. I learn all their songs, and so that's how it is. So it's good that James was the guy to inspire to start singing. Now, I would not say to mimic his singing technique, but that's a whole different story down the road. The most important thing is that you found someone that had motivated you to sing. That's great. What do you think of Serge Tankian? His voice took a nosedive the past 10 years. I haven't seen, to be honest, I haven't seen them live. I don't even know if I've ever seen a live video of System of a Down. I would say that his technique is, as a whole, from what I've heard, is very wild. He makes a lot of noise. Like he makes a lot of noise rather than making what we would consider to be like legato or beautiful singing sounds, or bel canto sounds, or that he makes noise. And so there's a distinction. I consider his voice to take a different role in their music than a traditional singer. Like if you listen to Chop Suey, which is like their, seminal song, everybody knows that, right? The role that the voice functions in that song is very different than if you listen to someone like, I don't know, Taylor Swift. The voice is like a rhythmic backdrop, but it also serves as like a shift in the like it's very rhythmic. Da 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 da. It does that kind of thing, and then it kind of moves into this more flowy legato kind of thing. And so I think his voice is one of the things that makes those transitions happen. So hopefully that makes some sense. I don't know much about his vocal decay. I haven't seen him live. I'll have to check out some videos, and maybe I'll do a video on him at some point, because if he is a good example of decay, I've been looking for singers that definitely have shown some signs of decay that I can give a good example, like kind of the James LaBrie video where I can show why they've done that. So maybe he's someone I should check out for. You got some brilliant stuff on your channel. Love to see you. Thank you, man. Thank you. This is my greatest passion. I love teaching voice. I teach 4 instruments. I teach guitar, voice, drums, and piano, but I went to school for voice. I've been a singer my whole life, and I love it. I love singing, and I love teaching about the voice. I feel like there's a big space open on YouTube for information about singing that really comes from an academic background. A lot of the information that I've seen on YouTube has been questionable at best. There is some good stuff, don't get me wrong, but it's really hard to find what I think is the truthful, good content that really tells things in a way that presents truth. Like I think a lot of the voice teachers, voice coaches you find on YouTube are telling their viewers kind of what they want to hear, or maybe not taking as in depth of an approach to giving their viewers an understanding of the voice as I think is appropriate. So I want to fill that niche. So I'm glad that you're enjoying it. I hope the audience grows as well, because I love this, and it makes me feel fulfilled to be able to do this for you all. So thank you. Thoughts on Claudio of Coheed and Cambria. So Claudio, so all right, so I have to kind of go into a different subject a little bit to explain my thoughts on Claudio. We all have something called a fundamental frequency. Okay. And I've mentioned this in one of my other videos. I don't know how in depth I went, but the fundamental frequency is the kind of like the pitch that your voice sort of naturally gravitates around when you speak. When you vocalize, there's like an average mean of pitches that your voice stays around when you use your voice naturally without trying to target it. So I think that, Claudio sings an extremely high timbre and a high quality, a high range a lot. And I'd want to hear him speak at his fundamental frequency to see how far away he is when you sing, because it's bad. It's bad to do anything too far away from your fundamental frequency, because it causes your muscles to keep it simple. It causes a lot of the mechanisms in here to work in ways that they aren't naturally predisposed to doing. Like in opera, for example, we have something called Fach, F-A-C-H, and the Fach is your kind of the your voice part. So like you might be a bass baritone, you might be a lyric baritone, you might be a lyric tenor, you might be a spinto tenor, you could be a mezzo soprano, you could be a coloratura soprano, contralto. There's all these different types, and those types kind of help you fit into the roles that are most comfortable and best for your voice. And I think that's one of the reasons that opera singers are so known for their vocal sustainability, is that they do parts that fit their voices naturally. So I say all that to say that I'm not sure about Claudio. I'm not okay. I just addressed his fundamental. He speaks very, very low compared to his singing. Okay, so see, that's an indicator that he's using his voice in a way that's unnatural. And as a general rule, when you're singing in a way that's unnatural, you're probably doing something that your body doesn't really want it to do. And it's not that you can't sing that way. It's fine, but you have to be measured about it. And you have to understand that if you keep pushing your voice to do things that it isn't comfortable doing naturally, you're going to harm it eventually. And I think that it's a choice. I mean, I'm sure Claudio is very wealthy at this point, so he probably thinks like, well, yeah, I probably can't sing as well as I could, but I've still got fans. They still love my music, and I'm making money. So it's a trade-off. For people like me, I'm not in a band. I don't sing for a band or anything like that, and I have to rely on teaching and being able to demonstrate and use my voice in a healthy way and show people how to do it. So it's important for me to maintain a healthy technique as best as I can. But if you're a rock star, then it may not matter as much. There are, and I plan on making some approaches, make some videos showing the approaches of singers who kind of combine the two. I think Russell Allen, like I mentioned in that video, does a pretty good job of combining healthy methods with a balanced approach to the aggressive stuff. All right, so great band. I'm surprised Claudio sounds exactly the same now as he did 16 years ago. Well, okay. I saw a comment. Maybe I'm not that perceptive. It's not a perception thing. It's a training thing. You have to understand that I've been in voice study since I started voice study when I was 14. I'm 31 now. And I went to college for way more than 4 years. I should the amount of time I've been in school, I should be almost to a doctorate, but I'm not. But throughout my entire time in college, I was in voice study, and I've been taking voice lessons consistently and learning. In college, I learned vocal pedagogy. I learned how the voice worked. I did analyses of my peers all the time. I did analyses of professional singers. It's not a perception thing. It's an ear training thing. Every live video I've seen. Yeah, see, I haven't seen them live, so I don't know. I can't tell you about comparing to live. I just know what I've heard of is like the recordings, like their studio recordings. That's all I know about with them. So let's see. What do you think about Maynard James Keenan and his vocal decay? So Maynard, actually, it's funny. Tool was my favorite band when I started high school. Like I was super into Tool. I was obsessed with Maynard and the lyrics and all their music. And so Tool is a subject that I know a little bit about. I think that on 10,000 Days in particular, we saw a lot of pitch correction. We saw a lot of post-production on his singing. If you ever watch him sing The Pot live, like it's nothing close. That vocal part, when I first heard it, I thought that I love it. I think the song's a great song. I love the song. But I do think that I don't think that part is necessarily even very singable. Just from the perspective of a vocalist, I don't know how, given the way the intervals are kind of put together and given the way that the line is shaped. I know that's kind of obscure terminology, but the shaping of the line, the intervals that are used, the ways that the vowels are used, I don't really know if that's even what I would call a singable part. I think that he kind of fudges it a lot on his live performances. Over time, I feel like I don't know if he's had that big of a decay. I think what he's done is he's dialed it back in terms of his energy levels. And if you listen to his like live screaming, most of it is just vocalizing. He doesn't scream. He does a I wouldn't say that he screams. It's more like a shout, which still isn't great for you, but it's better, I think, to do a projected shout than to do like a harsher scream type sound. So I think he's done a pretty good job considering his age of maintaining things pretty well. But another thing about Maynard that you have to think, and this goes back to the fundamental frequency thing, his range of pitches in his songs never really, like The Pot is like the most he's pushed his range up. He keeps his range pretty tight. Like he doesn't really go outside of it very much. And that's probably why he's maintained his voice pretty well. I saw a video of Tool live from like a couple of months ago, and I thought he sounded reasonably okay. He seemed like he seemed like his energy level wasn't very high. I don't know if that was just the show itself, or if it was him deliberately dialing it back a little bit. I don't know, but I thought that he sounded reasonably okay for his age. I mean, singing metal in your 50s, to be able to maintain it that long and be on pitch and have a consistent performance is pretty good. So I think he's done a pretty good job of maintaining his voice. Elvis is the king of gas, got to appreciate his music. Well, actually, I don't listen to Elvis at all now. Like I liked him as a kid. I don't know why, but let's see. Hello, there's a band from my country called La Trampa. Let's see. Uruguay. Let's see. I hope I pronounced that right. La Trampa. Is that right? I'm going to listen to some stuff. Let's see. La Trampa. Let's listen to this. That's not it. Give me a song to look up from La Trampa, and I'll check them out. Give me something specific to listen to, because I'm seeing a bunch of different things, and a lot of it's not in English. Yeah, it's not in English, so I don't know what I'm not sure. Yeah, thanks. They're great. So, all right, I don't speak Spanish. I don't speak anything other than English. Like on a very rudimentary level, I can speak about 5 languages, but that's because I've had to sing in those languages. The diction thing is really, it all kind of ties together. We'll get there. We'll get there. We'll get there. The diction stuff's a big deal. We'll talk about that in a second. I want to get down to these comments first. Yes, I'll say what records. Okay, this is Caída Libre. Okay. What other voice teachers on YouTube would you say are good? There was one girl in particular. Let me see if I can find her name. I saw her videos that were very good. Let me see if I can find her. Look her up. Her channel was not wasn't very popular. I'm looking. Let me see. Yeah, I don't know. I can't remember her name, but it was the only one that I saw that I felt like did a pretty good job of explaining the science of singing. There's a lot of people who give conflicting information, and I'm sure that if you spend enough time, looking up things about the diaphragm, you'll find things that can counter what I say. But the reason where I come from with my philosophy is that, I studied under a guy named William Hobbins, Dr. William Hobbins. He studied in North Texas. He got a doctorate in vocal education. And he's worked with major singers all over the world. And he is incredibly well read and knowledgeable about the science of the voice. His voice teacher was a lady who wrote books on vocal pedagogy and learning about the science of the voice. So I learned my entire approach to teaching the voice and learning about the voice comes from a strictly academic perspective. I try to keep subjectivity out of it as much as I can, because what sounds good to someone is always going to vary. I think that guys like Tom Waits sound terrible, but there are people who love him. So, that's fine. I go strictly to the objective look at it. I don't take the subjectivity. Oh, well, because I think this person sounds good, they're a better singer than this person, because that's not necessarily true. Singing healthily, or being a good singer, is about having good coordination and having an efficient usage of the mechanisms that go from basically, your torso to your mouth. And I mean, even some places, like parts of your body that engage other than those. It's about coordination. And I think the best singers objectively are the ones that coordinate their bodies the most efficiently. And the sounds that come out of that you can have all sorts of different sounds that come out of it, basically because everyone's voice is different. So if you properly use your voice and you're efficient with your singing, your voice will be distinctive in and of itself. It's the same reason that if I put on a blindfold and 10 people that I know spoke in front of me, I can identify them all by their voices, because everybody's voice is distinctive when it's used in a natural way. You don't have to modify it to make it distinctive. So I'll have to get back to you about the voice teachers I thought was good, because I cannot find her. I'm looking and I cannot find her to save my life. There was one person in particular that was really good that stood out. I don't know where she is. That's sad, because I was very impressed by her approach. Anyway, so let's keep going. Very looking, yeah, let's say band's cool. Again, I'm talking about singing. I'm a professional voice teacher. But talking and singing are very closely linked. the way that you talk and the way that you sing shouldn't be too terribly far apart from one another, because singing ultimately is just targeting your speech. You're using the same mechanism as when you speak. So there's not a big difference between the two. There shouldn't be. Let's see. Can you talk about how you achieved your awesome speaking diction and maybe recommend some things to practice for improving diction? It's a bucket list thing. Me have bad brain, me blue pepper. Oh, wait, this is pro talk. My bad. Okay. What's up, man? Good to have you here. Let's see. Diction. All right. So I have this one exercise that I do with all of my voice students, and you just take a scale, like a major scale, and so I'm just going to pick a pitch. And it goes like this. It goes red leather, yellow leather, red leather, yellow leather, red leather, yellow leather, red leather, yellow leather. And then you go back down. Red leather, yellow leather, red leather, yellow leather, red leather, yellow leather, red leather, yellow leather. And so that exercise like that, it basically just gets you using your mouth a lot more. So part of the diction is all about utilizing the tongue, utilizing the lips, and making sure that your mouth properly moves to create the sounds that you're creating. And that goes into singing and speaking both. The part of, it goes into the part of it goes into language stuff. He said I have good Spanish. A lot of that is because I learned IPA in college. IPA is not the beer. It's IPA stands for International Phonetics Alphabet. And the International Phonetics Alphabet is sort of like a universal way that we kind of can look at other languages and find vowels and sing the vowels without knowing how the language sounds. So a lot of times if I'm looking at another language, like I've sung in German, I've sung in Spanish, I've sung in French, I've sung in Italian, I've sung in Latin. When you look at all these languages, like they're completely different in so many ways. But with IPA, the IPA symbols that you can Wikipedia the IPA International Phonetics Alphabet and you can see it. If you learn the IPA symbols, then you can determine how something is spoken no matter what language it is. You can determine which vowel to use no matter what language it is. Actually, English is by far the most difficult language. And you probably heard that before, that English is the hardest language. The reason is that we have such strange vowels and we have so many rules that we break with that kind of thing that it's hard for people outside of the English that are, predominantly English language speakers, like if English is their second or third language, it's really hard for them to find a baseline of how to pronounce our vowels. So IPA helps with that a little bit. The diction itself, I think that my diction comes from the fact that I grew up in the deep South Georgia, and I saw how people around me talked, and I didn't want to do that as a young kid. I didn't want to sound like that. Like I didn't want to walk. I can do it. I can do the Southern thing all day. I can talk just like this if I want to, because I hear it all the time. See, but I don't want to do that. So when my mom even pointed it out to me when I was a kid that I was really fastidious about the way that I talked. And I think that the first step to improving your diction is slow down your speech and make sure that you put plosives or but you put your plosives on all of your speaking, like on all the words that are appropriate, and you put T's on your T's and that kind of thing. Just make sure that you're being fastidious about the sounds that are supposed to be made. Whoa, my chat disappeared. Okay. Oh, there it goes. It came back. All right. Woo, lots of questions. Okay, awesome. I got a lot of stuff. Woo, a lot of work to do. All right, so hopefully that helps you a little bit with diction. Slow your speech down and make sure that you're being fastidious about all the consonants, and you'll get faster with it as you go on. Don't be afraid to open your mouth to say things as well. Like, you don't want to close things up like this, because then it's all, it kind of turns mumbly even though you're speaking. Make sure that you're using this all these things in your mouth and your lips. All these things are designed to help you enunciate and be sound clearer when you speak. So don't be afraid to use it when you speak, and that'll help a lot too. Don't know if you've already talked about Geddy Lee, but if you didn't, what kind of insight could you give about him? So Geddy Lee is, I think I've heard him speak in some interviews, and he has a kind of naturally high-seated voice anyway. So I don't think that he sings too far outside of his fundamental frequency. I think that a lot of the sound that comes from Geddy Lee is a combination of nasal resonance and high laryngeal positioning. So like basically the layman's way of looking at this, the larynx is like where your Adam's apple is. So this whole thing is your larynx. And as your larynx moves, the space in the throat changes. So if your larynx is really low, this way down here, you're like way down, like at the bottom, like this, you have a lot of space in your vocal tract. And you can demonstrate or feel that feeling of doing that if you yawn. Like when you yawn, if I touch my Adam's apple, it's dropped way down, and my vocal tract is much larger at that point. Normally, when you speak, your larynx is in a neutral position. I think, and then you have the high laryngeal position where you push things way up. And if you notice when I do that, my voice kind of takes a brighter, tinier sort of quality. I think that a lot of Geddy Lee's singing comes from a high laryngeal position. And I think that that's how he creates his sound. And the thing about the high larynx is it's okay sometimes, but using high larynx a lot of the time is going to create a lot of extra tension because you're not giving your voice the space that the increasing of the size of the vocal tract needs to sort of reverberate. So you have to push more to get more sound with a high larynx. So I think that's kind of how Geddy Lee creates his sound. John Witherspoon. So I'm a big fan of Earthside. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of Earthside before, but they're a progressive metal band. I saw them live, and they have a song called Mob Mentality that John Witherspoon sings, and I thought it was terrific. I think he's still in pretty good form. His rasp is getting to him a little bit. Like he does a lot of covered singing, which means that he's using air over the top of the voice like this. And I think that covered sound it makes it hard for him to not go flat sometimes. Like he has a tendency to sing a little flat. But I think in terms of vocal health, he's done a pretty good job of maintaining it considering the style that he sung. But that covered sound will take its toll eventually. But I think he's in pretty good shape. Caída Libre. Let's look at this real quick. I'm going to get your questions as fast as I can, guys. I want to give you all sort of a, I want you guys to be able to get as much as I can. All right, let's listen to this real quick. Just get a quick rundown. So I put it at like 1 minute. Okay, so briefly, what I picked up here is so one thing about the more Italianate-based languages like Latin, Spanish, Italian, Portuguese, all of these languages have a commonality in that a lot of times they use much brighter vowels. And so the brightness of his vowel sticks out to me when I hear him sing. In the classical realm, we talk about something called the chiaro scuro, which is translated to the bright and the dark. So in a bel canto or beautiful singing sound, as we talk about in the classical sense, the goal is to create a combination of a dark and a light sound. And typically in the opera realm, we're going to have a lot of high soft palate, like low larynx, that kind of thing. Yeah, I did talk about James Hetfield, but I'll get there in a second. You want to have a low larynx, high soft palate thing when you sing classically, and you create a formant that makes it bright and light sounding. But if you're not singing in that style, one of the ways that you can make your singing sound brighter is by using brighter vowels. And it sounds to me like he's using high larynx and frontal resonance. Now, I haven't listened to him very much to know exactly how he sounds. I only listened to about 15 to 20 seconds, but I didn't hear anything that stuck out to me as being particularly bad for you. But I'd have to listen to it some more. So tentatively, I'll say that he's got a pretty decent voice. From what I heard, it sounds like it's pretty good. It's pretty healthy. Let's see. Karl John Franz. Oh, so Karl John Franz. I've watched some of his videos because I've kind of like scouted my competition. I don't want to start a YouTube war, but I have some serious issues with some of the ways that he approaches vocalization. And that's a can of worms that I don't want to open right now. But I think that him specifically, I feel like some of the things that he talks about are just completely pseudoscientific, and they don't have any basis in the operation of the voice. Like when he talks about compression, and he talks about like multiple passagios and calls them the bridges, those there is one passagio, sometimes two, and that's like the point where your voice changes registers. Sometimes for women there are two passagios, but there's only one main passaggio in the singing voice. And this term that he uses, compression, the only thing that I've been able to correlate to what he calls compression is extraneous tension in the front of the face. And it has to do with what we call embouchure. Embouchure is the shaping of the lips and the mouth when we create a vowel. But I have some issues with the way that he approaches some things. And I'll go more into that in the future, probably in a video, but I don't want to start a YouTube war. I'm still a new guy, but I would like to see his science. I want to know kind of where he gets his stuff from, because I'm not sold on it. Now, not everything he said was bad, but some of the core facets of what he advocates, I don't see it. So let's keep going. Okay, the game. Have fun in the chat, Gaming Pepper. It sounds like me know how to sing the flamingo. Well, go learn the flamingo song, man. It can't be that hard. Anybody can sing if they want to. Mandarin's the hardest. Usually English. Actually, English is somewhat easier for folks using Germanic or Slavic. Okay, that makes some sense. Yeah, because the German phonation is pretty difficult. I could say that for sure because I've done several German pieces. I've done quite a bit of German singing. As a high baritone, can I sing in the G4, C5 range without long-term vocal damage? Okay, I remember your question. I was going to get to your question from the video. That is a very subjective thing. I can't say for sure because I don't know your voice. I can say that if you feel strain, if you feel tension when you sing, you shouldn't be doing it. Period. There's no way around it. If you're creating tension in your singing, then there's something in your body that's working in a way that it shouldn't for you to make sound. Your falsetto is the best way to move into the higher ranges without vocal damage. But see, that is a whole separate thing as well. Like you have to learn to use a mixed voice, coordinate a mixed voice up into your high range, because using this whole concept of reinforced falsetto you hear about a lot is actually really bad for you too. And it uses a lot of strain, a lot of force that you don't need to do in your head voice. So I would say that like I'm a bass baritone. And I get into the F sharp range on a good day and I feel pretty good about it. But I don't try to push my range. That's not how I believe that singing should be done. I'm a big advocate of getting your fundamental frequency, finding the sweet spot in your voice, mastering it, getting it really well coordinated, and expanding outward. I don't like saying, let's get you to sing and then let's jump up and see how high you can go, because it's coordination. It's just like if you can't run if you can't walk, right? So if you have to get your voice walking well, so to speak, in the middle of your voice before you move up into that other stuff. So it's hard to say, man. That's a very nuanced and in-depth question that I'd have to actually sit down and hear you sing to be able to answer for sure. I would say in your falsetto, it's probably okay, but outside of your falsetto, with no other knowledge of your voice, I'd say be careful. In the interview with Edens, you mentioned that Robert Plant had unhealthy habits. What habits were specifically? So briefly, he pushed a lot. He used this like really tinny, nasal, high larynx, forced pushed sound that caused a ton of subglottal pressure when he sung. And that kind of thing just burns you out really quickly, to keep it simple. Over time, you'll burn out a lot faster singing that way. All of my students, every single one of my students hates the red leather, yellow leather exercise. And my professor in college, he had us do it like, let's see how fast I get. Red leather, yellow leather, red leather, yellow leather, red leather, yellow leather, red leather, yellow leather. I mean, we had to be able to do it that fast. And so, we had to start out really slowly and build it, over time. So that it is hard, but it's really good because you have to accent the D in red leather, yellow leather, red leather, yellow. You can't just go red leather, yellow leather, red leather. You can't just make it all just come out. You have to be fastidious about each consonant. Okay, so let's keep going. It's leather, exactly like leather instead of the version of as in. I can't see what that symbol is. I love Seven Dust, but Mob Mentality. Yeah, I love Mob Mentality. That song's killer. Thoughts on James Hetfield? I already so many questions. Okay, I've already talked about James. I think he has a lot of jaw tension. If you go back and watch the beginning of the video, I address him right at the beginning. So I did talk about him, but to keep it shortened, I think he uses a lot of extraneous jaw tension. Roy Khan. I have not listened to a lot of Roy Khan. He has been really highly requested. I've heard that he's a very controversial singing figure, but I don't know enough about him to make a. I don't know enough about his singing to be able to make a comment at this point, but I will get there because he's been very highly requested. Brett Manning. So, okay, Brett Manning is Brett Manning's the same guy, I think, that was is an IP symbol for voice the muted. I thought that. Okay, I think we're talking about two different like languages, because when I say the, I do a schwa, I do a mute e, but that looks like from here it looks like I can't see it. It's like really blurry. I have a big monitor, it's blurry on my screen. Let me look up that symbol just so I can see which one it is to make sure I know what it is. Yeah. It'll post back up and you can watch it later. See IPA chart. I just want to make sure I'm hearing that vowel. It is the vowel that I think it is. Let's see. Is this it? Okay, I see. Okay, so in American English we say weather or mother, but I see where the confusion is. So that's weather, mother. Yeah, I see. Yeah, I see what it is now. I see I was confused, but it's a accent difference. I think it's a difference in accents. I see what it is now. All right. Yeah. So Roy Khan, I don't know. Brett Manning is the same guy that taught Karl John Franz. That's Karl John Franz. Is that it? Yeah, Karl John Franz. Yeah, I think he's the same guy that Karl John Franz gets a lot of his rhetoric from. And if that's the case, I think Brett Manning does like the speech level singing method. And I've only briefly looked at it, but I was very very skeptical from the brief amount of research I did on it. I'm not going to pay for his course. You know, I've already spent well more than I ever need to on a vocal education. I'm not going to spend money on his course. But I'll try to get some of the basics down. And I plan on making a video at some point where I kind of take like a bunch of these big name voice teachers and sort of show the pros and cons of like what they represent, what's good, what's bad, that kind of thing. Because there's a lot of, like, I've been through Melissa Cross already. Like pretty much everything that I've seen from her has been garbage. And I know that's like sacrilege because a lot of people swear by what she says, but I haven't seen anything that she's advocated that I feel like is really healthy and good for the voice. So we'll see. But that's something that I will address. If you put a scientific way to do constructive critique, it's not really a war. Yeah, but you know, people on YouTube love drama, and this whole channel just ended up being like an accident because I commented on a James Labrie video, and so that's that's sort of where it all started. I wasn't planning on making this like a big thing, and I mean I love it. This has become a really fun thing for me, so I'll definitely do it. And keep going with it. But yeah, I don't want to cause drama. I don't want to burn bridges before they're even there. You know what I mean? So, hi, Zach. You clearly have a huge amount of experience singing. Have you ever sang in a band? Yes. I've sung in – I was a worship leader for a church like 13 years ago or so, and I sung in that. I've done some like rock covers for various bands. I've sung in a like a pseudo jazz band. I've done some jazz covers. The Minobot. Oh, that's actually I'm storing stuff in there right now, but I have a cajon. It's actually at work right now, and I leave it in my studio at work in case a kid wants to play on it or something like that. But it's a cajon. But I've sung in bands. I've never been much of like a touring singer type. Most of my singing has been in the classical setting. Like I've performed in a couple of operettas. I've done several Broadway productions. And I've done a lot of like aria singing. I've sung in a lot of choirs, but the actual band singing I've done some, but not as much as like touring band singers do. I haven't really found a band that I felt like I was like at home with yet. So maybe one day. I'm not opposed to the idea. I just need to find a group that I feel like I fit in with. And being like a classically trained singer, like singing in the operatic style, it's very hard to break out of that and sing in the non-classical way. And that's kind of a concern I get from my students a lot. Like, oh, well, if you teach me the bel canto method, am I going to end up being an opera singer? No, you're not. It's all about how you apply the things that you learn. When I was in college, it was most practical for me to apply the bel canto method in an operatic setting. So my voice developed in that manner. And as a result, I sort of have gotten all my habits around that operatic style, and it's very hard to get out of that and then move into other things. Like I covered "Drive" by Incubus not too long ago with a band with a bunch of my coworkers, and it was good. I mean, it turned out okay. I was pretty happy with how it turned out, but I also am not a I know that like I'm not what's his name? It slipped my mind right now. Brandon Boyd. I'm not Brandon Boyd. We had totally different voice types, so. I'll play in a band, sing with a band for fun, but not any huge amount. Karl explains compression as voice's intensity, breathy voice being low on scale, powerful chest vocals being. Yeah, see, just hearing that tells me that it's not accurate. Breathy vocal usage is unhealthy. Like it's breathy. Speaking, breathy singing as a whole is not healthy. Doing this stuff down here, if I wanted to sing down here and I'm doing it really airy, that stuff's so bad for you. It's called covered singing. And I'm probably going to end up making a video on that specific subject by itself, like the types of singing and what's good and bad for you. But putting more air through that's necessary is really bad. You have something called breath to voice ratio, and that's a whole separate deal that would take forever to explain. But you don't want to have too much breath. You don't want to have too much voice. Like there's a balance between the amount of breath and the amount of air that you create and that you use when you vocalize. And arguing that you use extra air in the low end is just completely false. It's unnecessary, and it also causes your voice to do unhealthy things. And that's like I said, it's a whole different subject. But yeah, the idea of singing breathy in general is not good. I mean, people create breathy songs all the time. Breathy sounds when they sing songs all the time. That doesn't mean it's healthy. And it's like I said, again, that's my approach is not about whether someone sounds good or not. My approach is this sustainable over an extended period of time? Look at Adele. Look at John Mayer. These people, they specialize in singing that super airy, super breathy sound. And they've had constant vocal issues throughout their whole career, getting surgery, having nodules. It all comes from that covered, airy sound. So I would not advocate that's a healthy way of singing. So if someone is selling that as like the way that you sing, or if that's what compression is, that's not good. It's definitely not good. Not in a health way. It doesn't matter how it sounds. In terms of objective vocal health, it's not good. All right, let's see. Do you think certain outside influences can affect someone's singing style? I heard Ronnie James Dio did trumpet when he was young. Do you think he's influenced in his technique? Yes, actually, that's a great question. When you sing in a legato style, for example, a very, very common thing that I tell my students to do when they're thinking legato is to think as if you're bowing a cello. Because when you bow a cello, the sound is created consistently until you turn the bow back the other way. So if you like, the line of the sound isn't broken until you move the bow. If you want to play in a very like choppy, aggressive non-legato, you bow a lot more. But if you want to make a smooth, elongated legato sound, you pull the bow once, you push the bow once. So I tell people all the time, like, if you're creating a certain sound, you can absolutely think of an instrument that makes that specific sound and mimic it, as long as you of course, keep things healthy. But yeah, sure. Like doing other instruments can absolutely help your vocal style. One of our guitar teachers at my studio that I work at, he plays saxophone, and I've done voice. I taught him some voice stuff. And one thing that he told me is that the diaphragm stuff from learning to play the saxophone has helped him do diaphragm stuff with singing much better. So yeah, it all correlates in a lot of ways. Now there are exceptions to that rule, but generally I would say absolutely yes. It's a good question. I think Mike Goodrich was a speech level singing guy. But that might have also been Manning. I think yeah, I'll definitely do that. Yeah, I told you the Mino box. Mike Patton. Oh gosh. Oh man. Mike Patton is like Devon Townsend. It's he is something, and he's a freak of nature. They exist. I mean, he's a freak. I don't know how he does the stuff that he does. I'm not going to claim to. Like, that's one thing you will find about me throughout watching my videos and talking to me over time. You guys will see that I'll tell you if I don't know. Like, I'm not going to make something up. I have no idea how he creates the sound that he does. I do some research and try to interpret things to the best of my ability because I'm not sure. That's true. I've studied opera singing in music school for 2 years. It's pretty hard not to sing in an operatic style. I understand the sentiment. It's, again, okay, here's how I'm going to put this. Singing is coordination. And I've already expressed this earlier in the video, in the stream. Singing is a coordination. So when you coordinate yourself in a specific way, it's very difficult to disrupt the coordination that you're used to doing. It's like muscle memory. You can't just snap and change your coordination. You can coordinate yourself to do multiple things, sure, absolutely. But if someone's primary vocal study is in an operatic method, you can't just expect someone to flip a switch and be able to sing Beyonce. Like, that's just not how it works. It's a coordination thing. So ridiculing someone because they are like limited to a style, it's ridiculous, because it doesn't mean that the person isn't capable of singing it. They just haven't learned the proper coordination to do it. So yeah, I don't think that's a good way of looking at things at all, not even slightly. But yeah, it's so pretty hard not to sing in an operatic style in a proficient way. It's coordination. Again, just switching out of whatever your wheelhouse is very hard. And a lot of singers, a lot of students that I've had that have had bad habits, it's very hard for them to break them because they've done so much recording and performing using these bad techniques that it's a slog. It's a process to have them rebuild their technique from the ground up. Lemmy Kilmister. Who's that? I think I know who that is. Motorhead. That's what I thought. I thought that was the Motorhead guy. I don't know. I don't think the way he sings. Again, I don't know. I don't know. I would, just listening to that sound, I would never think that it's healthy and sustainable. I don't know much about his career or how well he sung over the course of his career, but I don't think that sound is sustainable. That really raspy kind of thing. Like, I don't think so. I don't know. Maybe I'll look some more into it and see if I can get some more knowledge about it. But I don't know. I don't think so. Is there any worthwhile online singing courses for a beginner, or should you just go straight to a vocal coach? Good, excellent, phenomenal question. Now I'm going to make this my last one, so I got to go. Don't do online singing courses. Don't. Here's why. Singing is very subjective, and it has to be tailored to the state of your voice. There are, like, I have a like a gauntlet, so to speak, of vocal warm-ups and exercises that I give my students. But all of my students do those exercises a little bit differently because I tailor the things that they work on to where their voices are at. So just because they're doing the same exercise doesn't mean they all do it necessarily the same way, because everybody's in a different place vocally. So if you listen to an online singing course, you're just going to get this like stock, everybody can do this sort of approach, which is not good because that approach may not work for you. Even like when I learned singing, I didn't even know this until I got to Atlanta when I'm working at the studio I'm at now. I learned to sing in something called the Germanic method. And there's an Italian method of singing as well. Even though I learned bel canto singing, I was taught with the approach of the Germanic school. And I wasn't taught in the Italian school. And I switched. I got a voice teacher that that taught me the Italian method, and it unlocked a sound in my voice that I wasn't able to create before. So everybody's voice is different, and everybody's voice needs different things. So I would say voice teacher first, period. And another thing is when you look at voice teachers, voice coaches, you have to look at their credentials and you have to look at their background. You have to look at what they have to offer and what their approach is. If someone, as a general rule, if someone says that their approach to vocalization is pedagogical, their approach to teaching is pedagogical, generally that's a good thing. But I found some people on YouTube that just throw around that word pedagogy, which is like the method of teaching. They throw that around a lot, but it's not pedagogical at all. So if they don't say they teach in a pedagogical way, I would avoid it. If they do say that it's pedagogical, I would be more willing to look at it. But another thing is that if you feel tension and if it ever feels uncomfortable, you have to be honest with yourself. And if your teacher's getting you to do things that's uncomfortable, that makes you not feel great, you got to tell them. Like one thing that I tell my students all the time is, how does it feel? Tell me if it hurts. Tell me if it's bothering you. And a lot of times my students will like, oh, it's great. It feels great. It's so good. Here's why. But then when I go back and I say, okay, well, why did you have that issue? Why did you have this issue at this part? It turns out they weren't telling me the truth. They were having some discomfort. They just didn't want to tell me because they didn't want to, disappoint their voice teacher. You can't be that way. So that's my general insight about getting a voice teacher. Hopefully that helps a little bit. And then I got one more question, then I got to go for real. Can you give some insight about baritones and high notes and how bad is it to sing with a high larynx? So I mentioned it earlier. High larynx creates, you have to think about vocalization. I use this analogy sometimes. An acoustic guitar has a sound hole in it. So when you strum the strings, the sound comes through the sound hole and it kind of amplifies it on its own, right? So the size of your larynx is like the sound hole of a guitar. So when you have a high larynx, you're closing up that sound hole to where it's the resonance doesn't have, not resonance, I should say the vibrations don't have as much space to move. When it moves up, it has to close everything a lot more. There's more muscle engagement when you have a high larynx. So it's not that you can't sing with a high larynx, but it's definitely not as efficient. Efficiency is what I'm talking about here. So with a low larynx, the sound has more space to move, that kind of thing. Now you're going to see some YouTube teachers that say like, oh, singing with a high larynx is fine, blah, blah, blah. And a lot of pop singers do sing with high larynx. And if that's the sound you're wanting to create, then go for it. But it's not sustainable. You're going to create a lot of extra pressure and a lot of extra weight and force on your voice by doing it. And it's about baritones and high notes. So I'm a baritone. So it's coordination. I said that word like a million times a day. It's coordination. You have to start at the middle of your voice, the sweet spot of your voice, and build that coordination and then move it up. Falsetto is different. Falsetto is pretty easy to utilize, especially baritones tend to have an easier time with falsetto than anybody else, actually. So, use the falsetto if you want to sing high notes until you've worked with a teacher that can help you find a mixed voice. Don't try to push. If it starts feeling high for you as a baritone, just flip it into your head voice, flip it into your falsetto. Don't even bother trying to push the sound until you're well coordinated and you've had some training. So I hope that helps you guys. Thanks for coming by. Like this has gone like better than I thought. I thought I'd be sitting here by myself for like an hour, but man, this is really cool. I'll do this more often. It seems like you guys, this has been pretty fun. So I guess that's it. This is awesome. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for supporting my channel. You guys know I have a Patreon. I got the links in all my videos. I would welcome the assistance if you guys are willing to support the channel, because I've got this webcam's terrible. I want to like decorate the wall back here so it doesn't look so bland. I've got a few things that I want to do. So the money that I'm getting on Patreon, people, is going to be fueled back into getting this channel better for all of you. So if you have any questions about voice lessons or any vocal questions, email me. My email address is zansley1@gmail.com. I'm going to type it in the chat. If you want to talk about voice lessons or anything like that, I promise you my rates are not crazy like Melissa Cross's. Typically what I do is I give a first 1 hour session is $20. Just to kind of give us like an idea of how well our connection is going to be. Like, do we fit as a teacher student kind of thing? It gives me an idea what your goals are. And then I do like either $30 an hour, or I'll do 5 lessons for $125 if you pay up front. Those are generally my rates. Now, it's negotiable if you're in a specific situation, but if that's something you're interested in, please hit me up and, let me, I'd love to work with you. This is my passion. And hopefully it'll be as interesting as the other ones have been for you. Take care, you guys. Bye.